Black people and people of color deal with systemic racism on a daily basis versus white people not having to deal with that because systems that we operate within serve white people and have historically. So
would you say that it would be okay then if a bunch of, like German students or English students said we want a white people lounge? Would that be okay?
It doesn't really matter to me.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Andrew Says. I'm here with TV's Lincoln J back at Trent University. And the goal here today, Lincoln, is to find the People of Color Lounge. I don't even like saying it, but it is a BIPOC lounge for decolonization, de-radicalization, every D thing you can think about. And we're going to find out if we can get in, Lincoln J. Let's go. We're back undercover, as you can see. Lincoln's got his backpack. I've got Juice WRLD on, no mic flag. We're in the belly of the beast here, Lincoln. We can't exactly just go in guns blazing because we could be kicked out anytime from campus. Now, last time we saw some shirtless bros, some soccer players, you name it. But this time school's in full effect and we've got to be careful if we want to get in and be accepted into the lounge. I just want everyone to know the stuff I do for Rebel News Plus. I'm about to walk up this ramp service, vehicle only ramp. There's no stopping me, Lincoln. I'm wild. Now, normally, you'd think you could get some water from this nice river here at the campus. But what you don't know is for the last 30 years at Camp Lejeune, people have been poisoned. If you or your family members were poisoned at Camp Lejeune, please call the number below.
If you spent time on base at Camp Lejeune prior to 1988 and developed any of these cancers or suffered any of these injuries, you may be eligible for significant financial compensation.
Lincoln seems to think this might be the lounge. I'm not sure. This could be anything. This could be a dungeon. This could be, the campus blank center. It's locked. We're going to die down here. What exactly? Can we ask you a question? No? Okay, where are you going? Come back. Where are you going? Personally, Lincoln, I'm glad that we've got to a point in society where LGBT graffiti is now the norm. Without this, how do we know how queer Trent really is? Come on, honestly. All right, Lincoln, we infiltrated the TSA Freedom Lounge. What appears to be white passing people in there. I think that's against the rules, but nobody had any problems with us being there. No security at the door or anything. I've got my diversity, inclusivity, and equity literature. I'm gonna go through that now. BIPOC is a newer term. Black, Indigenous, People of Color. Black and Indigenous people are emphasized in this acronym to reflect the disproportionate oppression both Black and Indigenous communities experience in North America. We're asking people about the Freedom Lounge. Have you heard of it? No, it's a center for people of color and Indigenous people. I just want to get word on how you guys feel about that. If it's exclusionary, if it's the right thing to do. Do you have any opinion on that?
I don't know. I'm so sorry. I don't know if I can answer or not.
Can I see that?
Yeah, you can.
I mean, I'm a white guy, right? So how am I? I'm not equipped to tell you if people of color feel like they need that space. If they do feel like it, then power to them.
Would you be in favor of a white people space, or why is that?
Because that sounds close to white supremacy.
But let's say it's a black people space. Is that okay then?
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm probably not the person to answer these questions.
No, you are the person. You seem very smart, very well spoken.
But I mean, just first thought that comes to my mind, black people and people of color deal with systemic racism on a daily basis versus white people not having to deal with that because systems that we operate within serve white people and have historically. So
we were just there. It's the lounge for BIPOC. I don't know if you know what that stands for. Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So it's supposed to be basically a lounge for everybody who's not white. Do you have any opinion on that? Do you think it's necessary, discriminatory? How do you feel about that?
I think it feels alright to me. I mean, Trent's basically an all racial school, and Since I've been here, there hasn't been any form of racism towards anybody of color here. So I think having a lounge like that would be benefit everybody of color. So
Would you say that it would be okay then if a bunch of, like German students or English students said we want a white people lounge? Would that be okay?
it doesn't really matter to me.
So you're okay with anybody having any lounge they want, basically?
Yeah, basically. I mean, if we're free to have our own lounge, I mean, why can't anyone like Germans or anyone like that have their own lounge? So
Very cool. Thanks, man. Now, Lincoln, if I was to predict to you that white kids would have a problem with white people having a lounge and say everything's systemic racism, and then what I assume, I don't want to assume too hardly there, but I think that guy was Native. I have a lot of Native friends. And he had no problem with anybody having their own lounge. So I think that's something I should have just predicted at the outset. Pretty obvious in 2022, especially on a college campus. We have to be progressive, Lincoln. We have to be. Thanks for watching another episode of Andrew Says on YouTube. If you want the full uncut version of this video and the show, you have to go to rebelnewsplus.com. Lincoln J will be there. He'll be pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion only on rebelnews.com. This free episode of Andrew Says is brought to you by
the values. You look at Western values in Western society, and these are values we could all relate to, but they're old world values of grit and community and perseverance.
It's a place where you can make a living with your back and your hands and a little bit of hard work. And it's a place of opportunity. And I think as Albertans, we're fiercely protective of that.
The world's energy crisis has been grabbing newspaper headlines. In a nutshell, we're running short of petroleum resources and the prices are zooming upwards.
My colleagues in the government and I have come reluctantly to believe that the price of oil in Canada must go up.
This was Alberta.
Origin of the Alberta separatist movement begins with the election of Pierre Trudeau as Prime Minister.
It was a deliberate and malicious targeting of the West, which suited Pierre Trudeau just fine, just like it suits Justin Trudeau.
Welcome back to another special episode of Andrew Says. They're all special, aren't they? Surprise pop-in guest, Jason, how are you?
Andrew, good to be with you here in the mothership itself.
Yes, finally. What brings you to Canada?
So I had some investor meetings this morning, and then, you can't come to Toronto and not call the folks at Rebel News. Either that or, go to a Raptors game. But Raptors not playing on this trip. So quick trip, just do some investor talks, and then want to come chat with you guys. Your powerhouses on GETTR, not just for Canada, but also for Australia.
Well, as I've told you from the beginning when you started GETTR, it's the mechanics of it are so much better than the other platforms. I always say how much faster it loads than Twitter, has the multiple things you can load onto your post. So just from that perspective, I think you guys are light years ahead. The first thing I wanted to ask you about, I've noticed you've been tweeting a lot of sports, posting a lot about sports on your way to Canada, Don Cherry and stuff. I haven't talked to you since you guys had the boxing event live on GETTR. You had the exclusive behind the scenes stuff. How did that go? Tell me how that came about. And why did you decide you guys wanted to get into sports like this?
Well, good question. Part of it is the platform becomes an extension of sometimes of my personality. I'm a sports junkie, and everyone on the team is a sports junkie. And this is what I think is great commonality, brings people together. It also gives us content beyond politics to talk about. And I think as we start becoming something where it's not just if you're on the left or if you're on the right or you're in the center, but even as people who say, you know what, I don't necessarily get motivated by politics every day, but I want that content. I want people talking about other things in life. Pop culture is really a big thing that people want to talk about. So sports, as you look to what we've started to build out in the UK, we have Matt Letizia on the platform. He was voted the greatest British footballer in history, played for Southampton. And in fact, on November 25th, we're actually hosting a UK versus US World Cup watching party in London. We rented out an entire bar, and you get in for free with a GETTR account on your phone. We're also doing that week our first ever GETTR comedy night that we're doing with the Comedy Unleashed folks, which will be cool. You get in for free with the GETTR account. We're going to have additional sports things coming up, but we found that between MMA and boxing, there's a huge synergy. Folks in those two sports seem to be very outspoken. Take a Jorge Masvidal. pretty outspoken, I think you could say. But we found with those two communities in particular, people like to voice their opinions. That's what we want with GETTR. We want the hot takes.
Well, I completely agree. Before I got into news and politics, I did do podcasting about MMA, and you find that they don't pull any punches. That's a terrible pun. Sorry, Lincoln. Producer Lincoln, by the way. Their opinions are very much in line with people who are down to earth and, not even necessarily calling themselves like right-wing or conservatives, just honest. I mean, they punch people in the face for a living. They don't really have time for bullshit. And a lot of these guys, even when they don't say it publicly, I've got a lot of people, not a lot. I mean, I'm not talking to many of the champions, but privately, a lot of them do agree. And you see people like Jorge Masvidal. I'm friends with a UFC fighter named TJ Laramie, who had to train in secret when the lockdowns were happening here, and then they go down to Vegas and they're allowed to train properly. But there is a huge crossover. I mean, Gina Carano was another one. I remember Ronda Rousey talking about how stupid some of the things were about fighter pay between men and women. So it's really interesting. So this soccer event, did you say Matt Letizia is going to be at that, or are you guys just hosting a big party?
Yeah, so he'll be there. So we're doing it again in London. We'll put it out there so anyone in London, or I guess internationally, if you wanted to fly in for it, that more power to you, as long as you have a GETTR account on your phone. But Matt will be doing some commentary. Of course, he was a Sky Sports presenter for football previously. He'll be doing some commentary before the match, and then at halftime, we'll have all sorts of TVs that are set up all over the place. So he'll be there. He'll be hosting it, but there'll be other fun folks there too. For example, Nigel Farage will be there. We'll have Right Said Fred, Richard and Fred, which if you had told me, I'm 47, if you had told me back when I'm Too Sexy came out, some 30 years ago, that I'd be hanging out with the guys who sang I'm Too Sexy, I would have said, you're nuts. They're active on the platform. They're great. I mean, these guys, Richard and Fred, they're awesome. I haven't yet asked them if they can maybe, do a little acoustic I'm Too Sexy at halftime. Maybe it might be mixing audiences, but we'll give it a shot.
No, that's great. And Canada, first time in the World Cup since I think like 88. So I'm excited for that. So we'll definitely check it out. I saw you, and might have just been a reply to one of your posts, but somebody's asking you about Don Cherry. Now, Don Cherry obviously is this huge figure from here. Cancel culture attacked him. Their ratings went way down. I don't think anybody watches. Lincoln, do you watch Hockey Night in Canada anymore?
Yeah, growing up, Don Cherry was the man. Everybody looked up to him.
Yeah, and now he's sort of been like pushed into this, you must apologize, but we're still going to fire you corner. I don't think he apologized. Somebody asked if you would entertain having him on GETTR in some facet. Are you familiar with enough with him to make an opinion on that or anything like that?
I know I'm familiar enough. I grew up in Seattle, so big hockey community in Seattle. They just got the Kraken, and obviously with all the we had a lot of folks from BC that were in Seattle that played hockey, and so familiar enough with it. Obviously, I know who Don Cherry is, but I don't have the intro yet. But on my way out, I'm going to snag a copy of Ezra's Rolodex and see if I can't get that started.
Yeah, for sure. I have. David Menzies has interviewed him at his house, so I'll try to find if there's a way together. Maybe you just show up at his house. Maybe that's the move.
Sometimes that's a mixed bag. Sometimes they're like, hey, let's talk, and then sometimes they call the police. So we're going to do it a little bit carefully, especially being a foreigner. Might be weird showing up at someone's house, but we'll try it.
I think in Canada you get more if you're foreign, but that's neither here nor there. Elon, Kanye, Jason Miller, Trump. Did you ever imagine a world... I have two parts to this question, but first, do you ever imagine a world where you guys are all running social media platforms? It's getting to the point where people have to start saying to the leftists on Twitter, oh, you guys need to create your own platform now. Just create your own Twitter. Could you ever envision this, and what do you say to the people? Like, it's rumored that thousands of people are going to leave Twitter. If that's possible, I don't know.
Well, I think Twitter, let's go and kind of unpack this. What this is a clear reflection of is that people are ticked off at the status quo. They don't like the way that moderation policies are being implemented. They don't like the political censorship and the political discrimination, which is really what I think it is. It's saying one group has free speech rights, but another group does not have free speech rights. That's really the crux of what it is. And, the left I think, has been living a little bit of a charmed life since they're in power right now. They have President Biden. They have both chambers of the U.S. Congress, and also leftists. I mean, look at Justin Trudeau. You look at leftists, Olaf Scholz in Germany, all around the world seem to be in control. So they're not really upset. None of their friends are being kicked off of social media. The pendulum is going to swing back, though, and the pendulum will start to kick off people on the left. They just don't realize it yet. But when they do, we're more than happy to have them join GETTR and our platform. But I do think that our free speech is going to become more decentralized as people realize we can't put all the power in the hands of Twitter and Facebook.
Are you glad then you got way out ahead of this and you're doing the sports and you've done vision and everything? Because it's going to be coming to pass, I think, soon, that Parler and Truth are going to be like, how come we don't have these things? So are you happy that you guys put that much into the technology right away?
Absolutely, because when we launched, I had two main goals, and this goes to the other point. Number one, the technology had to be superior. If you're just saying we want to have a junior varsity knockoff of Twitter, we can get people to visit once, then they'll never come back. You have to make sure that the tech is there. But the other thing, too, you have to constantly keep innovating. Otherwise, people say it's getting stale, it's getting boring. That, I think, is one of the keys with Twitter. Twitter hasn't innovated. They've done a couple things lately. They've thrown in spaces and, trying to get into that clubhouse scene a little bit. But for a platform that's been around 15 years, they've innovated remarkably little, which I think that's actually, I'm surprised we haven't heard more on the innovation from Elon Musk. That would have been something where he would have gotten into. And you look at the younger users of social media who like the short video format much more, the TikTok, the Instagram Reels. So the first priority when you launch, make sure the technology is superior, and then we continue to innovate. It's not trying to be a competitor to Twitter. It's trying to be something when we add in the visions, we add in the live streaming, all these other different things to make it interesting. In fact, one of the cool things we have coming up, I think we launched this in December. We might hold it till January. Essentially a meetup feature. So where Zuckerberg is trying to push people into some kind of nerd pretend universe of like half people. Although you saw where he got busted for actually adding legs to his avatar.
Yeah, I noticed that he said that this won't be what it really looks like.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. We're actually trying to do things that bring people together so you can opt in and say you want to meet up with other GETTR users in your area, or maybe you're at a tailgate, maybe you're at a sporting event or a concert and you want to meet up with other GETTR people. You can actually opt into a situation where you can start meeting up with people individually or in real life. So the tech has to be big, but then the second part is it had to be an international platform. This was one of my big keys that I knew I could have an influence with, and I think we've done that. We're at 51% US, 49% international. That's not a slouching matter. That's pretty good. Brazil is our number 2 market with about 15%. UK is number 3 at about 10%. Germany is about 7%. Canada is about 6%. So Canada is our 5th largest market, but also this comes back to Rebel News. Australia is our 7th biggest market, where obviously Rebel News has been a powerhouse along with Avi, who's just been doing fantastic work for you guys. And in fact, to let you know, Rebel is actually GETTR's biggest user in Canada, and Avi is GETTR's biggest user in Australia. Wow. So you guys have a pretty big voice when it comes to the GETTR world, but the technology and their international approach is really the differentiator, in my opinion, for GETTR.
Yeah, Avi's influence is crazy in Australia. Any one of us, somebody will say, hey, Rebel News, great. But Avi has they have changed laws based on what has happened to Avi with the protesting when they threw him to the ground. That was a good time. But I wanted to ask you, I was going to say about Zuckerberg too. I don't even think he wants to be involved in politics anymore. I don't know if you listen to him on Rogan, but he's so obsessed with VR and augmented reality. I think if that guy could turn back the clock, he would say no to a lot of the politicians that asked him to be involved in stuff. Hunter Biden, for example, the FBI stuff there.
Where's Hunter?
Exactly. Still, fun anecdote about that is Amazon canceled my order of that book. A little conspiracy for you. Laptop from Hell, pre-ordered it. Oh, it's just canceled for you. Don't worry about that.
Really?
Little good conspiracy there. Amazon has canceled a lot of things.
Well, I'm in New York with Miranda Devine, so I'll need to get you an autographed copy.
I would appreciate that.
But the Zuckerberg thing. So here was my initial thought on that. My initial thought was that he knows that Facebook is failing. There is no future growth for Facebook. What is, I think, 2% of people 18 and younger use Facebook, and they said of that universe, 45% will disappear in the next 2 years. So basically it's dead. That's why they've morphed Instagram in with Facebook, and one or two clicks and all of a sudden you're basically in Instagram Reels and you're no longer even at Facebook. So the way they've morphed him in, because he realized that. But as he's gotten into this, so I thought initially the Meta stuff was just a way to distract away from the fact that their current business model isn't sustainable for the long haul. The audience is disappearing. I tell you, I think he's into this weird transhumanism stuff where you just plug in, and look, I used to laugh about it, but it's a real deal. I mean, this whole concept of plugging your brain into some computer and, oh, I'm going to have new friends on the computer, or I'll be able to have certain clothes on the computer I don't have in real life, or I'll have certain cars for my legless torso. There is this aspect to transhumanism. I've referred to Zuckerberg as the digital Klaus Schwab. I think he wants us to just plug into the matrix, and I think he's a real weirdo.
Well, yeah, because once somebody's if they're plugged into your platform, then how much more data can you get? You can get where they're looking at, anything they spend more time at. It's going to be just play, stay here. He even mentioned on Rogan, call your friends from inside the metaverse. Now, why would I just not use a video thing on my phone, though? Like, so you want me to put something on to look at somebody in a virtual space instead of just doing a video call with them? A lot of it doesn't make sense, and that's why I'm saying I think he just wants out of the political game. He just wants, like, VR chats. And, Lincoln, you were saying that it's losing tons of money, I think.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I can just tell you from my perspective with my friends, like, just no interest in it at all. Personally, I haven't looked into anything about it. I just don't care about that world.
And Facebook on its own, like, I think everybody, no offense to older women out there, but I think it's the grandma social media now, and that must hurt him. But enough about the Zuck. I think he's doing something weird.
There's interesting point on that. After 2016, Zuckerberg and Dorsey really drew the ire of their fellow Silicon Valley elites, saying that because of them, Trump won. And to an extent, they're kind of right. I mean, Trump's superpower is that he's able to evade traditional media and go right to voters. And so it was almost like the, Scooby-Doo at the end where, if it wasn't for you pesky kids, we would have won. It was the same thing with, if it wasn't for you pesky kids, we would have gotten Crooked
Hillary. It
wasn't
for that internet.
That internet's thing. And so they really got pummeled. And I think that's why Zuckerberg came back in 2020 and spent all the money on kind of the voter reg and things that's been documented, the hundreds of millions they spent on that. But I think even Dorsey, as he's kind of slinked away and kind of ridden off into the sunset and tried to get away from it, I don't think those two I don't think that's ever gotten the full recap of the damage that it did to them. They really got hit hard by their progressive buddies who blamed them for Trump's win. And I think that probably left them a little bit scarred. But, Andrew, even aside, though, from Zuck and Dorsey, TikTok. TikTok is a big, scary thing right now. There's been a lot of attention for it here in Canada, in the U.S., in the U.K., in Australia, where it just was a couple of weeks ago, with President Xi being reelected. I guess is that what we're calling it now?
Maybe. I don't know what term. Do they use the term reelected? Do they actually have a formal vote just for show, I guess? For
show. It's the party votes. But then when we saw some of his other allies who didn't like anymore are retiring, which is, I thought the Wall Street Journal should have been ashamed of themselves for putting retire in a headline when you don't get retired. They just decide what point you get sent off to go break rocks with the Uyghurs.
Well, maybe they paid for the ad. I know a couple of the papers here have done full-blown Chinese tourism ad, 5 pages long. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were just like, hey, let's publish this thing saying how great we are.
But this is now who ultimately is in charge of TikTok. ByteDance, which is the parent company, is based in China. They're a Chinese company. The basic surveillance laws in China say that you have to open yourself up for surveillance. We know from BuzzFeed and Bloomberg that you can access Americans' data in China. So here's the scary thought. My oldest daughter is 14. And imagine being able to develop a psychographic profile of anyone right now at a formative age. Are they going to want to like something, swipe left, swipe right, be ultimately motivated to share a clip? Imagine then at 24 when they're at voting age. We know a lot of people are getting their news from TikTok now. That algorithm is easily manipulated. Imagine as people start getting their 30s and 40s, and then TikTok now has 10, 20 years of psychographic analyses of that person. Think about a future leader, whether it's a member of Congress, whether it's a president, where TikTok will know more about their thinking than even they will. That is really scary.
Yeah, and they'll know exactly what type of video content somebody's most likely to share. They'll be able to sort of mold their propaganda into something that somebody says, oh, this isn't anything. It's something I should be going for. And if you just think about the things that are pushed now, whether it was black squares or stuff about Amazon fires, or take any of this like leftist mainstream narrative that they want to push across, that Jimmy Kimmel cries about, for example. They'll know exactly how to perfectly manufacture that for shareability, and probably pay influencers to do so. They do that now. People have already been coming out saying that they've been paid to post Ukraine stuff. Some of the people we've worked with. I wanted regarding the elections, though, I wanted to ask you about some of the midterms. Which one's the most entertaining for you? One of the ones I wrote down was Oz and Fetterman, just because I think that's geographically close to you. Anything that's been catching your eye? I mean, Tucker Carlson's been interviewing everyone I think that he wants to win. From what's the guy in Texas? I'm forgetting all their names now. In Texas to Kerry Lake to all these people. What's the most interesting race to you? You can say Fetterman if you want, because I watched this guy and I'm just like, man, come on.
Well, first of all, so it's Dr. Oz versus Dr. Frankenstein. There is something not right about Fetterman. And I guess I'm not, maybe I am being ableist. I don't really care. But
this is the show to do it.
This is right, exactly. But that's the thing now. His wife's trying to spin it and say, oh, you're being ableist if you criticize him. Come on. I mean, first of all, he looks like a big Frankenstein. The bulge protruding out of his neck. It's like Frankenstein with the bolts coming out of his neck. The only difference is that I have not yet seen any villagers chase Fetterman through the town with a pitchfork or burning torches. That might be next. I mean, he literally is Frankenstein. Here's the thing about, I've been around a little bit, as I'd said, about 2022, is right now Republicans have about a 4-point, maybe a 5-point generic ballot registration advantage. In 2010 and in 94, the two other big Republican landslides of my adult life, Republicans trailed on the generic ballot going into Election Day. So for them to be leading, this means it's going to be a blowout. And you're going to have people who wake up on Election Day and say, wait, I won. You could see, I think Blake Masters wins in Arizona.
That's what I was thinking of.
Kerry Lake, I think, wins handily. Adam Blacksalt, I think, beats Cortez Masto in Nevada pretty handily. J.D. Vance will be fine. Ohio, Ted Budd will be fine in North Carolina. Ron Johnson will be reelected okay in Wisconsin. Even though the polling shows it a bit further apart, I still think we could get really, really close in Washington State and Colorado. I think Don Bolduc in New Hampshire is going to wake up and beat Maggie Hassan on Election Day. That's one where a lot of people are saying, yeah, maybe he's in range, maybe it's creeping. I think he could be a surprise winner. I think Herschel Walker wins handily in Georgia, and then I do think Dr. Oz beats Frankenstein Fetterman in Pennsylvania. A lot of these, again, a lot of people are going to wake up the day after the election, and we're going to be looking, saying, how do they win? The bottom has fallen out for the Democratic Party. They have no leadership, terrible message. The economy is going in the wrong direction. Crime is massively problematic, and Hispanic Americans are abandoning the Democratic Party in droves. And it's both the economy and the safety.
I think I was going to ask what you think are the major driving issues here, but I think crime's a huge one. You can't have a DNC-run city. And it's taken me so long, I say this all the time, to get to this point where, like, this is obviously the problem, is the leadership. You can't have a Democrat-run city that isn't, okay, 3 blocks of the downtown financial sector are wonderful and clean and nice. And then as soon as you step across, especially in Chicago when I visited there, as soon as you cross a street, people are throwing stuff and yelling stuff at you. So these DNC-run cities that have been, you go down the list, St. Louis, Detroit, Chicago, 30, 40, 50 years of Democrat run, people are finally, I think, starting to see, especially when you get these DAs in, many of them Soros-backed DAs, when they say, oh, you can just get out without bail for pretty much anything. It was Illinois with it's like second-degree murder, kidnapping, this new act that they have where they don't chase down any criminals. People, I think, are finally starting to notice that, there's direct people who are causing this to happen. And the other topic, I think, is drag queens and transgenderism in these books and schools. And you have all these parents going to city councils and school board meetings where they're standing up and creating all these viral videos. and they're just piling up on top of it. And then what do you get? You don't have a guy in the White House who can just, be quick on his feet and be like, well, we're actually doing this, this, and that. They have to get up in there and lie to this guy. Now, as much as Jen Psaki was terrible and circling back, she wasn't quite as bad as Karine Jean-Pierre is. Karine Jean-Pierre just pretends that the sky isn't blue. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Joe Biden. I mean, you're stupid if you think the economy's not doing well.
Although the only thing I'll say on Karine, I think she actually believes it.
I hope not.
No, Jen Psaki didn't believe it, but she was saying it. Jen's actually, I've gotten to know her a little bit personally over the years. She's actually pretty smart. She's pretty pro-business. She gets it. A lot of that's lip service. Karine's actually crazy. She actually believes all this stuff. And it's, I mean, the Kool-Aid, I mean, she has been chugging pitchers of this Kool-Aid. There's no more Kool-Aid left for anyone. She's drank it all. It's that bad. But I think, when you're talking a moment ago about some of these issues and you mentioned crime and got a little more detailed, I think that's ultimately even what's going to deliver Lee Zeldin the win for the governor's race in New York. That's one of my favorites. Just
I hope
I'm
so.
personal friends with Zeldin. As someone who used to work for Rudy Giuliani and saw the work that he did to turn around New York City, it has really kind of become, I know it's a family-friendly program here, but it's become a shithole. You walk around New York and it smells like marijuana, the whole place, the homeless, just the rampant crime. We're just a block off of Central Park on Broadway, and there was a carjacking in front of our office last fall on Broadway, right near Central Park. I mean, in the middle of the day. But I think the Democrats, their refusal to go and acknowledge some of these problems, and then the social engineering stuff just gets weird. It just gets weird with all the trying to push the ideology. And, Steve Bannon has really been talking about this precinct strategy going into the midterms. This is where I think you have a lot of people who say, I'm actually motivated to now run for school board. I'm motivated to run for mayor, where people are really setting their sights on the local level. That's also a difference between 2022 and, say, 2010 or 94. There was those previous elections were much more federal. This is from the ground up. You're going to have a lot of people who are going to be like, yep, now I'm in charge. I'm on a school board. I'm a mayor. We're going to get rid of some of these wokest policies.
Yeah, I think it's something that desperately needs to happen here because everything flies under the radar before it's too late, especially in our local school boards. I want to ask you two things. Steve Bannon, do you remember there's this documentary out about in 1992 they created this giant biodome ecosystem. Have you seen this? And Steve Bannon comes in and buys it at the end, and they act like Steve Bannon must have wanted to cover everything up. Are you familiar with this documentary?
I am. I haven't seen the documentary. I know about Steve's work with it, and it's funny because some of Steve's family members, I believe, is his brother, and I think his niece and nephews, or his nephews, still live in Arizona, and so they all kind of went out there to do the biodome project. He's a little ahead of his time. Now you see Elon Musk talking about Mars and the moon and different things like that. And so, Steve was just a couple decades too early.
They cheated right away. This is before Steve Bannon. I don't know what the claim is. They seem to claim that he wanted to shut it down to hide climate change. I personally wouldn't lean towards that as a person who watches Netflix documentary with a bit of skepticism. But a couple weeks in, they just bring in, one girl goes out to have surgery on her finger and brings in a bag of supplies. I'm like, well, there goes your entire project. And that happens very early in the documentary. But the other non-political thing I wanted to ask you about is vertical real estate. And I think I might have asked you about this before, because I know you guys have a building in Manhattan or rent space in there. And I've read that you need to purchase vertical real estate. So what I've read is these big businesses buy vertical real estate around them so that they can be the only building that can build vertically. Is this a real thing? Can you explain it in layman's terms? You know about this?
Yeah, well, I know that. So I'm not a real estate expert. My wife's a little bit more of a real estate expert than I am. She works in the commercial real estate space. There is a lot with views and obviously what you can see. Now, as far as just being taller than anything else around you, very few cities where I think that would truly apply, New York being one. That wouldn't surprise me, and I wouldn't be surprised if the main driver of that is just local government and a way to tax it, or to find ways for them to essentially monetize on it. But the whole aspect of real estate and having certain views, whether we have a Central Park or the beach in California, something like that, that's been the case. But I'm not a vertical real estate expert.
I tried. Lincoln J, do you know anything about this? No, we can't get him to look this up, I don't think. Let's go behind the paywall. I want to talk about Brazil and censorship. RebelNewsPlus.com. You'll get the full interview with Jason and the full extended version of the street content. We will see you there. Thanks for watching another episode of Andrew Says. To get the full version of the show with bonus segments, go to RebelNewsPlus.com and sign up now.